so I did it for science. She's Huda Beauty's last of the large palettes. She is yet another neutral color story. She's also expensive. Was the Icy Nude palette worth the $69 that I paid for it? Well, let's find out. What is up, everybody? We are going to be doing 2 looks today using the new Huda Beauty Icy Nude palette. So this is supposedly going to be Huda Beauty's very last large palette ever. I do believe she's still going to be doing the 9-pan palettes, which I will get to my thoughts on that in just a moment. But here's the color story right here. Sorry that you're kind of being blinded by the silvery packaging in here. And what does she do? Get icy with our latest collection. Be an icy baddie and jump on the icy eye trend with our Icy Nude eyeshadow palette. Don't be afraid to break the rules by combining frosty silvers with cool burgundies. This palette features 18 shades of ultra pigmented shadows and innovative textures for fiercely confident looks. Our Icy Nude palette is packed with innovative, buttery, smooth, intensely pigmented shadows in various textures, from bio glitters and mattes to molten and sparkly shimmers in shades of silver, grays, platinum, nudes, burgundies, pinks, and whites for a totally icy vibe. Now, I do have most of her larger palettes. I don't have all of them, but I did see this color story, and as I've mentioned in a lot of my previous videos, I really do like these icy kind of cool toned color stories. While neutrals are definitely not my favorites, I definitely do love a good neutral look. I do, again, prefer the cool tones over the warm tones. But part of me is also thinking that I don't know if this is going to be worth the $69 that I paid for it. Number one, this shade right here is a pressed glitter, and I absolutely hate pressed glitters. That is a personal preference, and I really wish that brands would just stray away from them. I probably will not be playing with this shade just because they're such a pain in the to take off and I don't want to deal with it. I'm interested to see about the rest of the shimmers and the foils in here. One of these is supposed to be like a plant-based glitter. I'm pretty sure that that's what this glitter is, being plant-based, whatever that means. Part of me is just not exactly sure if this is worth the $69 that I paid for a very kind of basic neutral color story. But however, I chose to buy it. Can't necessarily complain since I made the decision to purchase it. I'll let you guys zoomed on in and we'll start working on look number 1 of 2 with the Icy Nude palette. I went ahead and did my brows. I think I'm going to start today with kind of more of like a gray look, and then tomorrow I might dip into some of more of like the golden-y kind of warm tone shades. I think the first shade that I'm going to start with to go in on my crease is going to be this kind of gray shade right here, and this is called Poised. Like I said earlier, I do have, I think, most of her larger palettes, and then I do have a few of her 9-pan palettes, and I definitely think that her larger palettes have a better quality. I don't know what it is, and obviously this is just my opinion. I don't know what it is about her 9-pan palettes, but I think the quality of both the mattes and the shimmers are just not the same as her larger palettes. A lot of the mattes are extremely patchy and the shimmers feel so dry and hard in the pan, and then a lot of them don't build up very well, or the payoff is just really not good. I think the better quality comes from her larger palette, so I'm half interested, half concerned to see what she's going to end up coming out with in the future, because I think, and again, this is just my opinion, I think that if I'm ever going to purchase eyeshadow palettes from her again in the future, then her formula in those palettes definitely needs to improve, because out of the ones that I have purchased, I have decluttered every single one of them because the quality just is not there. All right, well, this shade is blending up nicely. It's not overly pigmented right from the get-go, and I do like the tone of this shade. It's kind of like a gray, almost like a taupe shade, but more on the gray side. What do you guys think about her 9-pan palettes, or just her palettes in general? I think my favorite one that she's done was the Mercury Retrograde palette, and I love the fact that for her, it was something different when it came to her larger palettes, because it had little pops of color in there, and I thought the color story was absolutely beautiful. All right, well, that's how that shade laid down fine, didn't have any problems. So the next shade that I'm going to go in with is this shade right here, and this is called Oneself, and I'm just going to use that to blend out that shade. Shades are blending together nicely. This shade, though, is making this other shade a lot lighter. So I'll probably take some more of that last shade that I used and kind of build it back up. But so far, getting a soft blend, not having any problems with patchiness or anything like that. So far, just between those 2 matte shades, there is a ton, and I mean a ton, of kick up in the pan. So if you're going to be using a more dense brush, I'd recommend just dipping in ever so slightly, because there's a bunch of kick up. But so far there's no fallout on the face. So I think for the outer corner, I'm going to go in with the shade right next to Poised. So it's kind of like this dark taupe color right here. And this is called She Rich. I'm just going to put that to the outer corner. I think something that I did really like about some of her later, larger palettes, yeah, guys, see, I barely dipped in, and that is just one tap in and there's all that kick up in the pan. So that's something, and it's just already all over my desk. That's something that, well, it's not necessarily a huge deal. I do find that when shadows are this tightly packed, it does kind of waste the product a lot faster, and depending on how you tilt your palette, it does create a huge mess, so I'm definitely not a fan of that. But anyway, something that I like about some of her newer-ish, like within the last couple of years, larger palettes, was I really love the marbled shades that she did. I think they're absolutely beautiful. I do feel like her shimmer formula has gotten a lot better over time. And then I also think that her foils are absolutely gorgeous, but they are unbelievably flaky. But even other brands that I absolutely love, like Clarity, has a really flaky foil formula. So I kind of feel that with like really good quality foils, a lot of them are just flaky. So I just lay down some glitter primer, and it's usually not really that big of a deal. A little bit of fallout on the face with this one. All right, I'm going to go ahead and blend that shade out with the last two shades that I used and apply some NYX glitter primer. All right, so I think the first shade that I'm going to go in with is this silver shade up here, and this is called Platinum. And I'm just going to lay that right next to that dark brown shade. That is beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, her shimmer formula has absolutely gotten better as she's curated more of these palettes. I'll add a little bit more of that dark brown shade in when I'm done. That is absolutely beautiful. All right, now I'm going to go in with one of the foiled shades in here, and it's going to be this kind of silvery one right here. And this is called Diamond Dew, and I'm just going to put that right on the inner portion of my lid. I'm just going to tap my finger in here so that I don't pick up too much of it, and so that it's not too overly flaky and that I don't get too much fallout. Yeah, even with the primer, there is still some fallout with this shade, but I do even experience that with my indie makeup brands. With these flaky foils, it's just kind of name of the game. So it's not a big deal, especially when I know that this is just kind of how these shades are. Those two shades are just absolutely beautiful. Okay, I'm going to clean this up, add in a little bit more of that brown back to the outer corner, finish off the rest of my face, and we'll come back and we'll do the lower lash line. Alrighty, so I think I'm going to use a couple of the matte shades for my brow bone and inner corner highlight. They're like a good matte inner corner. So I think for the brow bone, I'm going to go in with the white shade right here, and this is called Avalanche. It's actually really nice pigment for a white. And then for the inner corner, I'm going to go in with the bottom pink shade right here, and this is IDGAF. I don't give a... It's a nice pink. Sometimes I think a lot of these matte shades for inner corners are nicer than some of the shimmers just because they're a lot brighter, and I think that they're easier to see than some of the shimmers. Because at least with shimmers on the inner corner, I think you have to be in the right lighting for it to kind of shine a little bit. I really like that. Okay, I'm going to put a black in the lower waterline, but first I think for the lower lash line, I'm just going to go into this shade right here. And this is called High Life. I know the owner of Huda Beauty came out with a song to go along with this palette, and I wasn't a fan, personally. Good for her achieving her dreams and accomplishments, but the music was 100% not for me. Although most of the music that I listen to is not for a lot of people either, so I guess it kind of evens itself out. I'm into a lot of not like super heavy metal, but I do like metal music. I like rock music. In fact, most of my right arm is dedicated to my favorite band. They talk a lot about mental health issues and whatnot. I'm just going to put a black in the lower waterline. Now to finish off the mascara. Alright, you guys, and this is the completed look number one. I'd have to say that overall, I'm very happy with how this look turned out. I think it's beautiful. The shimmer and the foil shade, I think, are just absolutely beautiful. I love silver shimmer shades, especially when they look very like chrome and metallic. I think it's just absolutely beautiful. So for these particular mattes that I use, they blended really nicely. That first shade is not ultra pigmented right from the get-go. You do definitely have to blend it up. And then that one self shade that I used to blend out that poise, it definitely lightened the shade up quite a bit. So if you're going to use that shade for blending purposes, just know that if you want some of that original color back, you will have to layer it back on. And there was also quite a bit of kick up in the pan from that last brown shade that I use. There is a little bit in both of the mattes that I use for the inner corner and brow bone, but overall I am very happy with how this look turned out. Again, the foils are a little bit flaky, so I would definitely recommend going in with some type of glitter primer. So I will see you guys tomorrow for look number 2. Alrighty, we're gonna go ahead and dive into look number 2. So I think that I'm gonna work more with like the warm goldeny shades in this palette today. So the first shade that I'm gonna go in with is this bottom corner shade right here. And this is called First Class. I don't think I've ever done First Class with anything because a lot of that is way too expensive for me. I probably could justify First Class if I was flying like on a really long flight, if I could afford it. I know when my husband was still in the military and we flew from Florida to Hawaii, that 13-hour flight, I definitely would have appreciated the larger seats and more legroom. I don't know what happened right here with my primer, but it's that area right there is not wanting to blend out. It doesn't seem like it's a dry patch, but I don't know what it is. So if the shadow doesn't blend over that very well, we're not going to judge that. We'll judge the shadow on the other eye if we have to. I don't know what that's about. That's just really weird. I've never had an eyeshadow primer do this to me. My lids aren't dry either, so no idea what's doing that. I really like this shade. It's like a really good kind of peachy transition shade for someone with lighter skin tones like myself. Really pretty. That would look really pretty with just this and a really light shimmer all over the lid for like everyday wear. Alright, I wouldn't say that this shade is unbelievably pigmented right from the get-go. It is a lighter shade, but you do have to build up some of the color. And then to darken that up a little bit more, I'm going to go in to this shade right up here. And this is called Unapologetic. I'm just going to darken up the crease a little bit. All right, this is another buildable shade, which I like. All right, to blend both of those shades out, I'm going to go in with this light shade right here, and this is called Cold Plunge, and I'm just going to work on blending all 3 of those shades together. These 3 shades have nowhere near as much fallout as the shades that I used the other day. It's actually been a couple days since I filmed the last look because I got my Glamlight and Ghostface Returns palette in the mail, so I wanted to film with that, and then I just had some other stuff come up. But today is, and yesterday, and I think the day before have all been snow days, which for me has been fabulous. I love the snow, I love the cold. So I think right now we have about maybe a foot of snow, and the mountains have gotten quite a bit of snow, and then our main highway that runs through where I live is closed all the way to the bottom of the state. Well, that's how all of those shades laid down, so I'm going to go ahead and darken up the outer corner, and I'm going to go into the other dark shade in here, right here. And this is called Faux Fur. We're just going to deepen up the outer corner. I've really been loving these Blend Bunny blending brushes. I need to go back on her website and place a couple more orders because these are the perfect size for my lack of real estate and hooded eyes. And in my opinion, they're like the absolute perfect density of what I look for in a brush. Alrighty, I'm gonna blend that shade out, put on some glitter primer, and we'll be back with today's broadcasted message. Alrighty, diving back into the shimmers, I'm going to start with this red one right here called Aurora, and I'm just going to place that right next to the brown. That's really pretty. On camera, it looks just slightly different, but it's kind of a mix between like a rose gold and like a cool kind of copper color. I do really like that though. And then the next shade that I'm going to go in with is this gold one right here, and this is called Gold Standards. I think that shade and that first light brown shade called First Class that I went in with would make a good like everyday look. Just place First Class all over the crease and then put Gold Standards on the lid. And then the last shade that I'm going to go in with is her last foil right here. And this is called VVS. I'm just going to put that on the inner portion. And same as with the last foil, there is just a little bit of fallout, but that's kind of to be expected. So I think so far I'm really pretty happy with how that looks. I'm going to clean this up, do my other eye off camera, finish off the rest of my makeup, and we'll be right back. Alrighty, let's go ahead and finish off the lower lash line. So I think to do that, I'm probably just keep it more on the softer side. I think I've used every shade in here except for that glitter shade. So I'm going to go in with the shade right down here, and this is called Lavish. Shade almost looks a little bit darker than it does in the pan, right? And I did actually already put something in my actual inner corner, but I do want to lay this kind of pinky white shade on top of it, and this is called Iced Out. I'm going to pick it up on the brush and then I'm going to spray it. Alright, you guys, and this is the completed look number 2. So I do like how this turned out. I will say though, those shades were not as pigmented as I thought they were going to be. The shimmers are really pretty, and for the most part I am happy with how this look turned out, but I'll go ahead and zoom you guys on out and I'll give you guys my final thoughts and opinions on the Huda Beauty Icy Nude palette. Excuse my hair, it is not wanting to cooperate today. Alrighty, so my final thoughts on this palette and if it was worth the $69 that I paid for it. I don't know. I do really like the color story in here. Again, sounding like a broken record. I do really love like icy kind of cool tone shades. The quality of the mattes and shimmers in here is really nice. Again, I really wish that they would get away, all brands would get away from these pressed glitters. I can't stand pressed glitters. But I don't know if this was worth $69 simply because really I think for me it's going to come down to the color story. These shades for today really were not as pigmented as I thought they were going to be, which isn't really a bad thing per se. And the quality of this palette is not bad by any means. The foils are really beautiful. The shimmers were pretty soft. The mattes built up really nicely. They blended really nicely, but I think what's making it difficult for me to justify this palette and its price, I think is going to come down to the color story, especially when I can find really similar shades in more affordable palettes, like my Beauty Bay palettes, for example. So here is like my Beauty Bay Neutrals palette, and as you can see, we do have some very similar tones in here, and I think it's just really difficult to justify a $69 price tag for 18 shadows when I could get something very, very similar and more in quantity for about half the price. With the Beauty Bay palette, you are getting 42 shades, I believe, for $35, and then for Huda Beauty, you're getting 18 shades for $69. So do I think you absolutely need this palette? No, of course you don't. There's going to be other brands that are more affordable where you can find very similar color stories. You might, depending on the brand, compromise a little bit on the quality of your shimmers, but not everyone wants extremely pigmented shimmers, especially if you're purchasing a palette like this for daily wear when you're going to be going to work or anything of the sorts. So ultimately you'll have to make that judgment for yourself, whether it's worth that price tag to you. I know that Huda Beauty is a staple in many people's collections. I have a decent amount of her larger palettes. She does have a beautiful quality when it comes to her mattes and shimmers, but I think that for this particular color story, it's really hard to justify the $69. But that is just my personal opinion, and I'm sure that I will have people who disagree with me, and that's perfectly okay. I'm happy to have this in my collection for the collector in me, and I am kind of sad that this is her last larger palette because she really does have a beautiful formula when it comes to her eyeshadow palettes. So as I mentioned the other day, I really do hope that she translates that quality now into her 9-pan palettes or whatever size palettes that she decides to curate. So yeah, guys, let me know down below what your thoughts and opinions are on this palette. Do you have it? Are you planning on picking it up? Do you like this color story? What do you think about this being her last of her large palettes? And thank you guys for watching another one of my videos today. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I do tend to upload pretty frequently throughout the week, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Bye guys!